Sensation and perception. So, in psychology, sensation and perception chapter explains how humans experience the world. Sensation is detecting raw stimuli via our senses, while perception is interpreting these sensations into meaningful experiences. So, we will quickly explain this chapter step by step. So, quickly go and subscribe this channel. Introduction to senses, sensation. So, this visual shows that sensation begins with detection of a stimuli by sense organs. The eyes capture light waves, which are converted into electrical signals sent to the brain. Without eyes detecting light, perception of the environment would not be possible. For example, walking in sunlight, you immediately notice brightness and colors, which your brain interprets. Ear with sound waves. Ear detects sound waves. Vibrations travel through the eardrum and ossicles to the cochlea, which converts them into electrical signals for the auditory cortex. For example, hearing a car horn alerts you to move away, demonstrating sensation triggering survival action. Tongue tasting food. Taste buds sense sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami flavors. The tongue's chemoreceptors send signals to the brain, allowing you to enjoy food and avoid harmful substances. Let's say sour candies trigger taste perception strongly, illustrating how different chemicals activate specific receptors. Nose smelling flowers. Olfactory receptors detect chemicals in the rain. Smell perception is closely linked to the limbic system, influencing memory and emotion. Let's say smelling fresh cookies reminds a student of home, showing how perception is emotionally colored. Hand touching surfaces. Total touch perception involves mechanoreceptors for pressure, thermoreceptors for temperature, and nociceptors for pain. For example, feeling a hot stove immediately triggers withdrawal reflex, demonstrating the protective function of sensation. Brain processing signals from eyes and ears. Sensory input alone does not explain behavior. The brain organizes and interprets signals, forming perception. You not only hear a dog bark but also understand its location and size based on sound. Child looking at rainbow. Vision perception interprets colors based on wavelength. A rainbow is sensed as bands of colors, but perception involves identifying each as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. A student listening to teacher. Brain interprets auditory signals into meaningful information like speech. Understanding instructions in class is perception of sound combined with prior knowledge. Person tasting ice cream. Taste sensation is combined with memory and emotion to produce perception. Let's say vanilla ice cream may evoke happy memories, showing sensory input connects with cognition. Person smelling perfume. Smell influences perception and mood. A pleasant scent increases attention and happiness, illustrating sensory influence on behavior. Touch and brain integration. Hand feeling rough and smooth surfaces. Touch receptors allow distinction between textures. Identifying a soft teddy versus a rough stone activates mechanoreceptors and brain interpretation. Child confused with optical illusion. Perception is subjective. Brain may misinterpret sensory information. For example, in the Mueller-Lyer illusion, two lines appear different in length but are equal, showing interpretation errors. Two children comparing objects. Absolute threshold. Minimum stimulus detectable. Smallest candle flame seen in a dark room illustrates human sensory limits. Person noticing a small change in weight. Difference threshold is the smallest detectable change. Let's say detecting that 500 gram weight became 510 gram shows sensitivity of perception. Incomplete figure. Gestalt closure principle. Brain fills missing parts to perceive whole. For example, seeing a broken cycle as complete demonstrates cognitive interpretation of sensation. Objects close together. Proximity principle. Objects near each other are grouped by brain. Example, stars in constellations appear connected. Objects with similar colors. Similarity principle. Objects that look alike are grouped. Example, red apples in a basket are perceived as one group. Wavy line connecting points. Continuity principle. Brain prefers smooth, continuous lines. For example, road signs with arrows guide perception using smooth shapes. Person seeing depth with two eyes. Binocular depth perception allows 3D interpretation. For example, catching a ball involves judging its distance and speed using both eyes. Person noticing motion. Motion perception detects moving objects. For example, noticing a moving car on road helps avoid accidents. Attention, motivation and experience. Magnifying glass. Attention enhances perception. Focusing on stimuli increases accuracy. For example, observing a lab experiment requires focused attention to notice small changes. Hungry child looking at food. Motivation affects perception. Hunger makes food appear more appealing. So students find a snack more desirable when hungry, even before tasting. Recognizing object with prior knowledge. Experience shapes perception. For example, familiarity with a cat allow quick recognition in shadows. Seeing ambiguous figure. Expectation affects interpretation. For example, seeing a rabbit or duck in an image depends on prior expectation. Different cultures perceiving same object differently. Cultural factors shape perception. For example, optical illusions may be interpreted differently by children from urban versus rural areas. Sensory organ diagram. Overview of 5 senses: eyes, ears, tongue, nose, skin, for example, helps students connect physical organs to functional perception. Visual cortex highlighted. Visual signals are processed in occipital lobe. Recognizing traffic lights involves brain processing shape, color, and position. Auditory cortex highlighted. Temporal lobe interprets sound. Let's say differentiating piano notes from a violin demonstrates auditory perception. Reacting to loud sound. Sensory reflexes protect us. For example, jumping at a fire alarm is an involuntary response. Tasting bitter medicine. Taste alerts us to potential danger. For example, bitter taste prevents accidental ingestion of toxic substances. Sensation as protection and adaptation. Smelling smoke alert. Smell perception triggers protective behavior. For example, fire smoke smell causes evacuation. Eye detecting light intensity. Photoreceptors detect light. For example, pupils adjust automatically to sunlight. Hand sensing hot stove. Thermoreceptors protect from burns. Feeling vibration. Mechanoreceptors detect environmental cues. Eye closed imagining object perception occurs even without direct stimulus. Using binoculars, distance perception enhanced. Noticing a small color change. J and D shows sensitivity of human vision. Watching 3D movie, binocular disparity creates perception of depth. Motion parallax. Brain interprets relative motion to estimate distance. Taste test. Individual differences in taste perception. Smell, touch and brain processing. Smelling flowers. Smell evokes emotion. Touching textures. Touch informs about environment. Optical illusions shows subjective perception. Stimulus, sensation, then perception. Explains flow of sensory info. Monocular depth cues. One eye help judge distance. Shape consistency. Brain maintains shape perception. Size constancy. Size perceived correctly despite distance. VR headset. Technology enhances perception learning. Light or dark room. Context affects perception. Peripheral vision detects surrounding motion. Now integration of senses and perception. Sour candy. Individual differences in taste. Smelling cookies. Memory and smell are connected. Touching teddy. Comfort and texture info. Brain lighting up. Perception equals to interpretation of sensory data. Comparing similar objects. Gestalt principles organize information. Figure ground perception. Focus on main object. Pattern recognition. Complex information made understandable. Color after image. Brain creates visual effects. Touch adaptation. Sensory adaptation to continuous stimulus. Exploring surroundings. Integration of all senses creates complete perception. So for the next psychology session, please subscribe this channel.